Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here with my next Dawson's Top 5. This time is Top 5 Worst Power Rangers Finales. First of all, this is my personal top list and is not in any way a definitive list, like I always say at the beginning of these. And I also always say it probably won't help people asking me why certain things are or aren't on the list, as if I am making it a definitive list, but this is my personal worst list. I intended to do this video around the time I believe Supercharge's finale aired, because I did a top 5 best one, which I'll link to on the end card. But to go along with that, and time got away from me, so I am releasing this around the time of Ninja Steel's finale. Even though it's not the full series with Super Steel, I figured why wait a whole other year. So this is being filmed before Ninja Steel's finale, with intentions of making it come out before Ninja Steel's finale, and as such, Ninja Steel's finale is not being included into this, also for other reasons, which I'll get to. But yeah, so this will release around the time, intentions before, but it might come out after. I just want to cover myself in case. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So for number 5, and I have number 5 and sort of an honorable mention that I want to talk about together. So my number 5, I'm going to be looking over here because I had to write the names of the finales down. I know the ones I picked, but I just couldn't remember all the episode names. Too many mythologies in my head. Okay, so for number 5, I did pick The Ultimate Duel from Power Rangers Samurai. And my honorable mention is Dino Charge's One More Energem. These are almost tied for top 5. Or bottom 5th one. The reason I want to talk about these together was because I wasn't sure whether to include the finales for the midway seasons from the Neo Saban era, meaning Samurai's, Megaforce's, Dino Charges, because while they are a finale, they're not the series finale. And for everything else on this list, the finale is always the series finale. But since we split it into 2 halves, it's kind of, there's 2 seasons now technically, but it wasn't really until Megaforce that they started treating them like a true season finale, I felt. And that's why Samurai was number 5, was because it was the first time it was a season finale, but they weren't done with the story. You know, we were getting Super Samurai, and it did bring things to a head between Decker and Jaden, but in terms of a season finale with a lot of impact that left you excited for the next season, I think it failed. It was one of the more solid Samurai episodes, if I remember, but it's just, after that, from Megaforce, Dino Charge, and actually, that's it. Ninja Steel, actually, I haven't seen it yet, but I know what's in it. They do treat it more like this is a season finale, this is more of a finite conclusion of some sort. And Samurai's just really didn't have that. And I wasn't sure whether to include that on this type of list because it's so different from the way PR usually behaves, so I almost felt in a way it was unfair. So it is the only one on this list that's a midpoint, and that's another reason whether I like Ninja Steel's or not, where I'm not sure whether I would include it on this list. But I felt like it was worth mentioning because I feel like it was the least successful at being a season finale. And One More Energem I wanted to put on there because it wasn't necessarily an awful episode, as it does have a plus over Samurai's, which is why I feel it's more of an honorable mention than the top 5. It's a plus for it actually trying to be a finale. But it felt so rushed and least impactful than it did. And in my personal opinion, Megaforce's was more impactful because it left you with this sense of urgency, like, oh my god, what's going to happen next? They didn't necessarily stick the landing in a lot of, or most ways, for Super Megaforce, but I did get sort of an excitement feel similar to the way the transition between MMPR and Zeo was, whereas Dino Charges felt very rushed. I didn't feel that impact like I felt I should have, and there was things that were glossed over that bothered me, like that they didn't check for Sledge's ship. So I think it wins over in terms of not getting the official top 5 slot from Samurai's because it actually was intending to be some sort of finale. But I felt like I needed to mention those 2 together, and I'm sorry if that's a bit more of a muddled category. Okay, number 4, Legendary Battle. I kind of hate to put this on this list because Super Megaforce definitely deserves a lot of its criticisms, but I also feel it's too much of a go-to punching bag, and I feel it doesn't get credit for some things that I found were enjoyable. And for me, Legendary Battle, the reason it makes the top 5 worst finales has honestly nothing to do with the anniversary aspects. Most people are like, they need to get more cameos and references and people standing next to each other. Honestly, the cameos were fine for me. I was pleased with the way that was done. It's a very unpopular opinion, but coming off so much overblown anniversary celebrating, I was happy for a more subdued approach to that. So I actually enjoyed the Rangers saving in the montage and then just a few helmets showing up. Like, one of my favorite moments was actually Caron's I Love Being a Power Ranger, which was in the extended cut. But so those elements were honestly fine for me. They definitely could have been a little bit better, but I didn't want anything more overblown than what we got. My problems with that finale were in some of the weird pacing issues of how it was all handled, in terms of, like, you know, you went up to the ship and then you had this battle with the main guy, and then the final battle with all the legendary Rangers was basically just cleaning up the henchmen. Like, that was my problem with the finale, is I thought there was some actually enjoyable moments in that finale. It was just the structure of it that killed it for me, but not the cameos. And also, I kind of hate that the ending scene is just Troy slamming the sword into the ground and walking away, that we didn't get any closure or any sort of, we don't even need an epilogue, but just some sort of epilogue-esque, or, you know, we usually get something like that, either an epilogue or a, this is what the Rangers' life's going to be like, or, you know what I mean. And those are my main 2 complaints, was the pacing of how the battles and stuff of importance was structured, and then the very weird conclusion that didn't give you any sort of closure for the Rangers. Okay, number 3 is Power Rangers Zeo's, what is it? Good as Gold? I've read that as Gone as Gold, so my handwriting is atrocious. So, I could go into a whole video how I think Zeo is overrated. I do like Zeo. It holds a special place in my heart, and I think the transition between MMPR and Zeo is actually one of PR's highest points, in my opinion. When I did my rewatch, I was actually really impressed with how it was handled, considering how messy a lot of MMPR is, and a lot of the foreshadowing was excellent. But that might be for another time. I might do a different video on that, and I do intend on doing a top 5 premieres and stuff like that. But anyway, Zeo got messy near the end, and the finale was so weird because its primary storyline was about wrapping up this thing about Jason not being able to handle the Gold Ranger powers anymore and having to pass it off on Troy. But then it was doubled with this, look, the Rangers turned giant and essentially defeated the Machine Empire, and then they were alive, and Zed and Rita blew them up with a package, and then it was insinuated that Zed and Rita were going to take over again in some sort of more significant fashion. So it's all basically messed up with behind the scenes stuff, and I don't think I have any definitive facts to give you, just stuff I've heard on message boards and at cons from accounts from actors and writers and stuff like that. But, and I don't know if there, I would love some sort of interview or book. I love stuff like this, with detailed behind-the-scenes stuff of every season, because I love to know, not only drama stuff, but I like to know, like, what-ifs, like, oh, we were actually going to do this, but then it never happened. Kind of like if you ever read the Hexagon thing. That's fascinating to me. I love reading stuff like that. But basically, the transition between Zeo and Turbo was very messy. I remember at one point, I think Johnny Young Bosch said that there was going to be Zeo suits in the Turbo movie in one of the early scripts, but the point is, the transition between Zeo and Turbo was rocky as hell. No pun intended, because of Rocky. And then the fact that we actually used the movie as the official canon transition, it just basically was what brought Zeo's finale down. And it was one of the most awkward, weird finales, to the point when I was little, I didn't even know it was supposed to be the finale. It's just so weird and awkward. Number 2 is MMPR Season 1's An Oyster Stew. This is one I debated about whether to and where to include on this list, because it's basically included on a technicality, but because of that, I felt like it also needed to be on the list. Whereas something like Doomsday was much more of a Season 1 finale for MMPR. But this was technically the last episode, and I just wanted to highlight the mess or the awkwardness that I think both Season 1 and 2 had this, where the season finale, the last episode, was basically just another episode. And that's obviously bad. Excuse me. But back in the day, when MMPR was this huge thing that ran 3 seasons and almost kept going like a soap opera, or like Sentai does in a way, but it wasn't structured like we have it now, or anytime after that, where it was beginning, middle, end of a season, you know. They did have that, but because PR just kept getting renewed and kept going, it was the season finale was just this average episode about Zach with this monster that looks like something very specific. So I don't know whether it was right to include it on this list, but because a season finale of the first season was basically just an episode, I felt like it was worthy of being included. And not to mention, I actually had a hard time coming up with the last couple in certain ways, because all the other finales, there are things that I like about them, and I didn't feel warranted to even include on a worst list. Number one, I'm not sure if this comes as a surprise to anybody, but is Dino Supercharge's finale, whose name I actually forgot to write down. I have a number one here because I knew it was going to be Dino Charges and I skipped it. But it's like End of Extinction or Edge of Extinction, but it'll be, if I put up any sort of text on the screen, I can't decide. I don't know if Future Me is going to decide to edit it that way, but you know what I'm talking about. This video is so professional. He looks over at a cheat sheet and then he doesn't even have number one written down. But anyway, I'm going to try not to go on too long about this because I did a whole rant about this in my Supercharge review, but this is one of the worst in history for me. It was so rushed in so many aspects, and the fact that it just made such a game-changing twist like it was nothing, and assuming that this would be, we had no way of knowing that this would or wouldn't be in the main PR universe. And at this point, we don't know what Super Steel's doing. I don't, I'm not in the future yet. So I don't even know how they're gonna try to explain it. I don't even think they will, personally. I think they don't care. Again, PR has had a messy continuity, but at this point, like, assuming if they set it in the main universe, it's like trampling over all this history that people care about like it was nothing. And even if it's set in its own universe, it's a messy twist to have, which felt like it was just there for shock value to bring the dinosaurs back. And the fact that they made no attempts to address whether this was in its own universe was annoying to me. Like, RPM's was clearly set in its own universe, just do that. We've already established that PR can have a multiverse by RPM and Samurai connecting, and the RPM elements in Super Megaforce. So I think there would have been no problem with that, saying, yeah, Dino Charge is its own thing, like RPM, but if you wanted to have some sort of crossover next season or later, it's doable. It was just a mess, even setting aside the way I felt it disrespected Power Rangers history. And again, I went on about that in length in my Supercharge video, so I don't want to go about it too much, but I don't like that, and I hate how that's so easily dismissed as, well, it's a kid's show, you shouldn't care. I don't like this aspect of, oh, this is a certain target demographic, so you can't care about this. I don't like that. I like Grey's Anatomy. Am I mad because they don't target me because I'm not, in the women's target group? No, but that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to care about it. I think that's stupid when people say, you're not allowed to care, it's a kid's show. Especially in a long-running franchise that has at least a decent-ish size of an older fan base. And I thought the finale really tossed aside so much lore that, while messy, was important, and if it wasn't in that universe, was still a mess that I felt was trying to twist itself to get surprise, and it also basically undid everything that series itself did. But anyway, that is it for my worst finales. Let me know yours, what you agree about, disagree, respectfully, don't get too mad. Probably will, though, you future people. But yeah, that is it for this list. I'm hoping to do, around the time of Super Steel's premiere, a top 5 best and worst Power Rangers premiere that will release in the neighborhood of it, and hopefully I don't forget and have to put off one of them till later. But anyway, until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It's Dawson Ryder, signing out.